Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Parks and Quality of Life Council Committee meeting. Today is January 17th, 2024. We are here in Council Chambers. Tonight we have a very exciting agenda. Before we get started, I did want to remind the public that the public is welcome to attend in person here in Chambers or remotely over our YouTube channel. However, public comment is not accepted at our committee meetings. Tonight we have some very exciting agenda items. First, we're going to get an update from staff about how the city's preparing for the state styrofoam ban that's going to be coming into effect in June and July of this year. And then we also have our guest speaker this evening is Port of Everett CEO Lisa Lefebvre to share more about the port expansion and other port updates. And then we will do our 2023 committee year in review of the accomplishments that we've all done together. So first we'll start with staff to share an update on the state styrofoam ban, how the city's getting ready for that. So go ahead and introduce yourselves and your titles and for the record and take it away. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kelly Frizzy, and I am a Public Information and Education Specialist from Public Works.
And I'm Kathleen Baxter, Public Information Officer from Public Works, and I work with Kelly.
And I just wanted to give a little bit of context about how I am the one sharing this information with you. So as a part of my responsibilities within my position, I am the project manager for the local solid waste financial assistance grant, and that comes from Washington Department of Ecology. And this allows us to do all sorts of special waste reduction and recycling things that include our partnership with Downtown Everett Association. So the about 40 recycling bins that we have downtown, that is something that's supported by this grant. In addition, our Clearstream Special Event Recycling Program is supported by this funding, and our recycling collection events. So we piloted one last year, and that was a huge success. And we are going to be hosting another in 2024 and 2025. And then for the previous biennium, we also were able to do some outreach about the single-use plastic bag ban. And the impact from this funding has been really impressive. So we actually were able to divert 106 tons of recycling from the waste stream from the previous biennium. So it is with that hat today that I am joining you all to talk about the styrofoam ban, or the expanded polystyrene ban. And to give a little bit of background on expanded polystyrene, and specifically why we don't refer to this, or it's often not referred to as a styrofoam ban. If I asked you to imagine something that was made out of styrofoam, you would probably imagine something like what you see in this banner image here. So the food service cups, maybe a cooler. So all of these things are actually made out of expanded polystyrene foam and not styrofoam. So expanded polystyrene is a lightweight plastic material that is comprised of small, hollow, spherical balls that are expanded and then manufactured into the types of items that you see here. Styrofoam is actually a product that is made by DuPont. It's a building material. It's a little bit different. Expanded polystyrene is abbreviated EPS, so you might hear me refer to it as that in this presentation. Styrofoam is XPS. So it's kind of like this general catch-all term, but it's not completely accurate. And there are some environmental problems that have been found with expanded polystyrene. And the problems that I'm going to share with you today that led to this ban are the ones that Department of Ecology specifically refers to. So it's difficult and expensive to recycle, not accepted in most households or residential recycling curbside programs. Because of that, it often ends up as a contaminant in our recycling. Or it ends up in the landfill, in waste-to-energy facilities, or sometimes just in the environment. And because it's brittle and breaks into many pieces, these pieces easily scatter in the wind and become a contaminant. So these are some of the reasons that led to our statewide EPS ban. Now, this was a part of the 2021 plastics law, and Kathleen's going to give you some flyers that were developed by the Washington Department of Ecology about the ban. And this ban went into effect in 2023. Specifically, at that time, it was just packing peanuts that are banned. And if you take a look on June 1st, 2024, all of these different food service products made out of EPS are going to be banned. And this applies to all manufacturers and all distributors of EPS in Washington. So it's not just a local ban. The single-use plastic bag ban had a grace period for people to be able to use up the stock that they had on hand. There's not going to be any grace period with the EPS ban. And as far as enforcement, Ecology is going to be responding to non-compliant businesses. They're going to be using education and providing technical support. If there are offenders that are repeatedly and continuously non-compliant, then they may be moving to a fine, and I've heard that that fine is going to be up to $250.
May I ask a quick question,
of
please?
course.
Thanks. So with the June 1st, 2024 ban, you shared that applies to all manufacturers and distributors. Does that mean that like our grocery stores would no longer have them on the shelves, or is this mostly just for businesses who use these products for food and other things?
It's the answer to that. There's actually kind of two parts. So if it is like a styrofoam plate, you're not going to find that on the shelves in the grocery store. However, there are exemptions. So one of the things, or two of the things that are exemptions would be found in grocery stores. So the little trays that you see that have like raw meat or produce packaged up on them, you'll see those. You'll see egg cartons still, but you won't see the items that somebody may buy for a picnic. Other exemptions for the EPS ban include EPS block packaging material. So if you envision like the kind of things that a new electronic, like a TV or an appliance might be packaged in. We talked about the trays for raw meat and produce and egg cartons. Medically necessary EPS, so if it's a container for drugs, medical devices, or biological materials, those are still allowed. And then containers for shipping perishable commodities are allowed. And then this is both from the retail as well as the wholesale perspective. Yes?
So what about like, dare I say a brand name, Cup of Noodles? I know, like that's EPS.
It is.
I imagine. And then there's plenty of noodle cups that come in paper, but, you
So-
know, products,
Right.
basic products that come into our state from elsewhere that are made of EPS.
So I was curious about that as well. And based off of the flyer that you have here, they do show no prepackaged food containers, and they specifically, that's funny, that must be the EPS product that comes to mind, because they do show noodles, the noodle containers. So, you know, it's sometimes hard for me to imagine, even with packing peanuts, that, you know, somebody can't pack up packing peanuts and send them into Washington, and so I believe it is the same with products, but I'll have to confirm if there's any sort of exemption to that, because that is, I mean, this is very broad.
Yeah, that's a good one, because that would mean some of those things, I'm sorry. That's a good one, because it would mean some of those things, I think that's the only way they're sold.
Right.
Some large categories of those. I had one other question. I know EPS and XPS are both used in building insulation. So does the exemption also go to building products?
The block packaging and flat, let me see how they worded it.
Yeah, it's usually flat.
They have, so the expanded polystyrene block or sheet packaging is something that was exempt last year when they started banning packing peanuts. I do not believe this impacts building materials.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about Ecology's role and the city's role as far as outreach around the ban. I have checked in with Ecology to see what their current plan is for outreach, and what they are intending is to reach out to food service businesses through health departments. So for us, that's going to be the Snohomish Health District. They are providing outreach toolkits in multiple languages. So what you see on this flyer here is one that they created in 2023 before the packing peanuts ban. And this is available right now in 5 different languages. And they said that they also have a flyer that is in progress that has information about the EPS ban, in addition to information about other 2024 laws that impact food service businesses. So some of those other laws that impact food service businesses are the PFAS and food packaging law. So that bans the paper and plant fiber packaging with PFAS intentionally added. Now, PFAS are a group of chemicals that make grease and water-resistant coatings. So if you think about for food service, this could be something like a French fry container open on the top, has previously, it might have had that lining of PFAS there so that the container didn't absorb that grease. And this ban began with some items in 2023, and then there are additional items that are being banned in 2024. And then there's also the compostable plastic labeling law. And a big goal of this is to reduce confusion about what is compostable. So this is going to set marketing claim standards for compostable products that are sold in Washington. So I know I am personally confused by a lot of the single-use serviceware that kind of looks compostable. It kind of has that texture, but I'm not super sure, and so I just throw it away even though it might be compostable. Or sometimes I might get a plastic bag that is lighter green in color, and I wonder if it's compostable. Now that is going to be demystified as a part of this. And then the City of Everett's role. So one thing that we are going to be doing is sharing Ecology's messaging with partners who distribute to or interface with restaurants in order to promote effective outreach. And some of these groups include Downtown Everett Association, South Everett Business Associations. Since this is a statewide ban, this is a big change for distributors and what they are providing restaurants. And so we're going to be reaching out to representatives at Costco Business, Cisco, Cash and Carry, just to see what kind of messaging is happening there between the supplier and the food service business. I've already started coordinating with Snohomish Health District. So as I said earlier, Ecology is going to be working through them on outreach. And so I just want to make sure that we're able to coordinate our effort instead of duplicating our effort. And then sharing Ecology's social media posts about the EPS ban and the related bans that affect local businesses. And then something that we want to emphasize through all of this as far as messaging is that idea to use up the existing stock on hand and to not really stock up. You know, I've heard that especially smaller restaurants might really stock up things and buy a ton at a time, and just after June 1st, that's not able to be used. And with that, I would welcome any questions that you have. Yes, please.
Councilmember Vogely.
I know that this isn't about plastic bags, but maybe you have an answer anyways. And I think during COVID, the city's plastic bag ordinance ban was, I don't know, was it repealed? I should know because I'm sitting here right now. But I know that we at least stopped making it mandatory for a minute. And I'm wondering if it's back.
Our
And-
city ordinance was repealed, but that was just because the statewide ban went into effect. And so that has been in effect since October of 2021.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank
Okay.
you very much. And you mentioned the South Everett Business Association. There is one?
Economic development was mentioning Connect Casino Road.
Okay.
And also Las Madres, they said,
Yeah.
provides a lot of assistance for businesses and that they would be able to share this messaging.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions. Do you know if Ecology or the state has funding available to help with any of the outreach or just the rollout of this?
Some of the local solid waste financial assistance grant can be used to spread their messaging. It is something that we would get permission through them, but I know that they wouldn't want us to duplicate any effort that they were doing. We do have less funding in that grant than we have in the previous biennium, and we do have other deliverables that have to be met as well. So there's limited funding there.
Great, always looking to the state to pitch in a little bit. Kathleen?
Can I interject?
Of course.
There's something about a limitation on spending their funds for business outreach.
Oh, that is very true. Well, outreach in general to businesses would be okay, but we would not be able to do something. For instance, a very cool idea would be a styrofoam recycling collection event for businesses, but we would not be able to spend any of our ecology funding on that because collection events and being able to dispose or recycling your items are a business expense. And so we would be able to provide that for households like we do with our collection event, but not for businesses.
Great. Yeah, I know I think she had come to a council meeting recently, but the Snohomish County, Washington State University, Snohomish County Extension Community Stewards Program, oh my gosh, it had a really successful styrofoam recycling event this last weekend despite the freezing cold, so they might be a good partner for an event like that. So when I think about the styrofoam ban, I think a lot about summer events in the city of Everett, our farmers markets, Salty Sea Days, food trucks and whatnot, and how they'll be using compostable products, assuming they would be. And so I was curious if the city has a role in providing receptacles so that they can go into compost instead of going into the waste stream.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We have our Clearstream program, which is special event recycling, and many groups who are hosting events borrow the compost and recycling and trash frames, and then we provide the bags. They arrange their own service, and so typically if it's an event downtown, they would get toters from Rubatino. And so we don't see that side of the disposal, but we do offer those items. One thing is though, even though EPS is banned, some of the alternatives are not compostable. So it might be plastic clamshells, it might be like the aluminum tins, which are more easily recyclable. Compostable products are an option, but vendors might not choose that option. But we do have that Clearstream program.
Great. And is that well known for the vendors that do come to events to let them know that that's available and that they're encouraged to provide those types of products?
Many event organizers do use it. I believe that as they're going through the process with economic development and setting up events, that they share that information. We also have an event coordinator's guide that's available on the website so that they understand the process, because there's lots of different steps and it can be a little bit intimidating the first time somebody coordinates an event and offers Clearstream containers, but we do have that information there.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Any other questions? Anything else you want to add? Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate the
Oh, you're very
update.
welcome.
And
Thank you for
thanks for
having
all
me.
the information. Let us know how we can support.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
And next up, we have the Port of Everett CEO, Lisa Lefevre, to share more about the port expansion and other port updates.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, slide that down. Okay, I wasn't sure what type of format it was going to be, so I have a lot of copies for people that may want it.
Then go.
Or if
Go
no one wants
compost.
it, I'll take it back, and I'm sure we'll go from there. Well, thank you for having me, Lisa Lefevre, Port of Everett. Thank you for inviting me here. I'll see if I can, there, oh, look at that, there we go. Okay. So I was asked to give a quick update on the port enlargement. potential for our boundaries, as well as just kind of a quick update on the waterfront. So be respectful of your time. I'll go through it pretty quick, but if you guys have any questions, just hit me as we're going. So a little bit about the port. So we are a special purpose district. We were created in 1918. We serve about 110,000 people. The county's about 130,000, give or take. I'll talk a little bit about how we were created. We finally figured it out. It took a while because our boundaries do make no sense, but I figured out why they make no sense. So I'll go into that in a couple minutes. Ports were created, allowed to be created in 1911 as part of the Port Districts Act. The idea being really is trying to make sure that the public waterfront and the shoreline for not only commerce but recreation and business stay in public hands. At the time, almost all the shoreline was owned by private industry, and it was an effect on commerce and the ability to transact in a fair and equitable way, I guess you could say. So we are governed by 3 elected port commissioners. Port commissioners hire the executive director, which in this case is me, and then I hire the staff and run the operations and implementation of the policy of the port. Just because we have the word port doesn't mean water. Port is tied with commerce and economic development. There's about 75 ports in Washington state, and they all mirror the economies in which they operate. So we've got a port in Walla Walla that focuses on the wineries and the incubators. And so it's a very diverse set of authorities that the ports have. We operate like a private business. So even though we're a public entity, we operate and budget like a private entity. And we do take a property tax. We are the smallest taxing district in the county. So the average homeowner pays about $100 a year to the port, but all of that money only goes straight into capital, environmental, or public access investment. None of it is authorized for any operations or port salaries or anything like that. By way of example, a lot of our operations actually invest more than the taxes in about a 7-to-1 fashion. So a lot of that revenue comes from the seaport, which I'll share with you. We do operate 3 lines of business. We have our international seaport, the marina, and real estate. We operate the largest marina on the West Coast, and $21 billion in exports. That changes depending on aerospace production. So the more planes that are being built, the higher that number is. I think the highest was about $30 billion in U.S. exports, which is pretty significant. It's a lot of jobs in Snohomish County. About 60% of the jobs in Snohomish County are tied to trade, compared to Washington State, which is 40%. We were recently, with all of our infrastructure investments, designated a strategic seaport. And essentially what that means is that we are prepared and our facilities are ready. So in the event of a conflict, we're able to respond within 48 hours notice. So we're one of only 18 ports nationwide that has that capability. There's only 3 on the West Coast. And we're home port to Naval Station Everett. So a little bit about how our boundaries don't make any sense. I talked about the Port District Act in 1911. So we were the 7th port created under the act. What happened was the community was trying to take advantage of wartime economic opportunities. And so on June 8th, 1918, the public put out for a vote a county-wide port authority. And it failed by somewhere in the margin of 20 votes, give or take. And instead of trying to, educate and get those votes over to the yes side, the people at the time essentially looked at all the precincts, townships, and jurisdictions that approved it overwhelmingly, repackaged it, and then threw it out to the voters the very next month. And it was approved almost unanimously on July 13th, 1918. Obviously, you can't do that today. You can't put back-to-back measures. But they were trying to capitalize on this wartime activity. Ironically, almost immediately after the port was created, the armistice happened, the war ended, and the port actually built the Mukilteo Ferry Terminal. The first 2 projects we built, Mukilteo Ferry Terminal and the first airport in Snohomish County, which was actually between Everett and Marysville on 529. So just a little interesting tidbit. This is a graphic, which you can see up here is a graphic. This is the Port District in the yellow, orange, and green. The red line is the city of Everett limits. So you can see there's portions of the city of Everett that aren't even in the Port District. And a large portion of unincorporated Snohomish County that has an Everett address, but it's not in the Port District. So you can see that. So the commissioners are elected to 6-year terms, and there are 3. Interestingly, if the port were created today, we would not, because the county is so large, we wouldn't be able to be created anything other than a countywide port, which I think it's tied to the economic development nature of the role. This is, as I mentioned, we have 75 ports in the state. They all look different, but we are the largest port of our size that supports maritime and international trade that is not a countywide port. So you see that Olympia, Grays Harbor, Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma, all countywide. Snohomish County is not listed because we do not have a countywide port.
So the Port of Seattle is actually the Port of King County.
It is a King County, yeah. Yeah, all of King County. Tacoma's all of Pierce County. Olympia's all of Thurston. Bellingham's all of
Okay,
Whatcom.
because you do hear the terms in the public, Port of Tacoma, Port of Seattle.
Absolutely, but they are countywide ports. Yep. This was our economic value study that was tasked by the Port Commission. For our centennial, we updated our strategic plan, and this has been something that's been talked about. I've been at the port almost 20 years, and it always comes up, and I'm kind of the opinion that we might as well stop talking about it and take action and see what the public has to say. It comes up about every 50 years. Ironically, I was looking through some old articles, and in the 70s it came up where Monroe was interested in, what would it take to have the port, offer services in their district. And then 2009, Snohomish reached out to the Washington Public Ports Association, same thing. So there's been some kind of mutterings of interest over the years just because of the unique tools that the port has to offer different communities through way of economic development, recreation, environment. So we ended our outreach. We've talked to almost all the cities in Snohomish County, and we ended wanting to talk with the people and the businesses. So we had about 1,500 responses from our survey, cross-section of 23 communities. This obviously is not a scientifically valid survey. We just wanted to try to get enough information to know, does it make sense? Could staff make a recommendation to the commission to justify the expenditure to place this on a ballot? Because it's not inexpensive to place these on ballots. Ironically, the port was originally approved with almost 1,500 voters back in 1918. And that's about how many people responded to our survey, so that was kind of an interesting tidbit. These are all the communities that responded. You can see, a lot of Everett was tied to the business community. We did have about almost 18% from the business owners. 88% of the people that responded own their own homes, which makes a lot of sense because a lot of our multifamily is in the Port District today. A lot of our outlying areas are more single-family homes. And you can see almost 10% rent. Most of the responses you can see were from Marysville, Arlington, Everett, Snohomish, Stanwood, Linwood, those places like that. We wanted to understand how often do people actually interact with the port, because sometimes, like as I mentioned, people think port, they think shipping, they think water. So trying to understand people's interaction. The vast majority of the people that responded interact with the port at least once a year. So whether it's coming to work or going to the marina or going to a restaurant or doing business with the port, there's some kind of interaction across the waterfront. So then we asked people to rank in order, 1 to 10. what do you think is the most important thing? And the port set this up by way of our strategic lines of effort. So, obviously our job is to create jobs. So jobs, transportation, community projects, recreation, quality of life, restoring the environment is huge, making sure we stay competitive, supporting our largest employers. The consultant that we hired to do the survey was Critical Data out of Spokane, and he said that the results of this were very interesting and unusual. What this is showing is that of the people that responded, of the 1,500 people, they gave all of these areas on average a 7 or higher, which is most of the time people will be like, oh, not too concerned about that. I'll give it a 1 or I'll give it a 3. But a lot of people ranked these pretty high. So I'll give an example because first time I cut some of the slides out. But creating and maintaining jobs, 32% of the people gave it a 10. So very, very high. Regional transportation, I think that was 41% gave that a 10. Recreation, that was in the 40s as well. Protecting the environment got the highest. Ironically, we have the styrofoam discussion right as we're going into this, but that was 46% of the respondents gave that a 10. So very much, it's not just that they gave it, a 7 or what have you. A large portion of them ranked a lot of these lines of effort as a 10. And this is how they kind of culminated. You can see in terms of mentions, not necessarily how it ranks, but who says what's important to them. Recreational amenities, transportation improvement, freight mobility, they want to get home faster. You get home faster, go to work faster, you get to spend more time with your family. Environmental cleanups and sustainability were very high, waterfront access. This was an interesting one to me, which was river management. That ranked very high. And looking back on it, it makes a lot of sense because we've got so many rivers and streams, and with flooding happening more and more. The port is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers local sponsor, so we're the ones who have access to all the federal funding to help maintain the river. Right now, the river maintenance is really limited to the upper and lower settling basin within our district. And so I think there's an opportunity for, derelict vessel removal of interest, derelict vessel removal up north, additional wetland restoration that could provide some surge capacity for flooding so that homeowners and business owners and farmers, don't have their entire farms flooded. So I think there's a lot of those kinds of discussions going on out there and interests. Sorry, my phone keeps beeping. It's a school snow day for my kids, so they tend to call quite a bit when that happens. And so these were the areas that they mentioned. So this is kind of where the rubber hits the road per se. About 43% or so said they were either very interested or interested in having port resources being offered in the community, being able to, do some of the things that were being discussed. The next largest bucket were either neutral or unsure. There was just a lot of, well, what is a port? We don't have water by us, need more information about how it applies to them and their community. And then only 16% were not interested in it moving forward. So this information gave me enough intel to feel comfortable making a recommendation to the commission to send it to the voters to, have their say. So that's what the commission did last month. And it's going to be before the county council shortly. It's not an approval, but it's a mechanism that they're required to act to be able to place it on a ballot. But it's actually the Port of Everett's ballot measure. That data that I just showed you before, this is how it breaks down based on community. So you can see there is the Edmonds. So there is a Port of Edmonds. We aren't proposing with the boundary enlargement area to affect Edmonds city limits or the Port of Edmonds district. So that'll be taken out. Interestingly, the 80% for Edmonds were likely business owners. because we didn't exclude out business owners if they said they were outside the district, if they had their business in the other areas. But you can see a lot of the rural areas were very interested that responded. So you can see index at 80%, Linwood at 72%, Marysville at 76%, Monroe at 67%, Sultan at almost 77%, Tulalip 88%.
Question I'm thinking about the responses, was that because the survey gave them some information about what the port could mean? Because I'm thinking that a lot of people in those areas would think, I'm nowhere near water, as you said, and would not normally respond that way. Did the survey say these are the kind of things the port can and does do?
We had there was only so much we could put in there because otherwise it would be, people would try to read the intro and be like, I'm not filling that survey out. So we had to be narrow, but we did in general say these are the things that the port can do. And, you know, when we had the intro survey, it was like, these are the port's lines of effort, what's important to you. Statutorily, we cannot do business outside of our district unless it's something that makes money, which a lot of the stuff that the community needs and wants is stuff that is a resource as opposed to a revenue generator. Prime example, the derelict vessel removal, right? So those kinds of things. So I think that by going through the survey, it kind of educated folks about the types of things the port can be involved in. But there's a lot more education to do with respect to ports. So this is the current, this is a graphic of the county and shows what the current district boundary is. And this is Edmonds excluded, and then the rest. Only about 15% of the county is represented by a port right now. So there's a lot of communities that, you know, may have economic development needs that we're not able to provide. We can obviously provide our expertise and answer questions and so forth, but when it comes to resources, we aren't able to. So what does it look like and what does it take? Boundaries have to be contiguous. They have to be passed by the Port Commission. They have to be placed on the ballot by the county council. And then it has to be approved by the voters, 50% plus one. And then immediately following, if this were to pass, immediately following that election, the following general election, if not sooner, if you're in a county over 500,000 people, which obviously we are, we have to put another ballot measure out addressing the governance structure. Do they want 3 commissioners? Do they want 5? As a reminder, the Port of Everett did put out a governance structure ballot measure for 5 members, 4-year terms in 2010. It actually failed by 67%. We talked to a lot of people about why, because most ports that put something like that, it always passes, like Anacortes and Edmonds. And it was because our boundaries were so small, they didn't feel the size of our district justified the governance structure. So thought that was interesting. So it is slated to go on the August primary. And we will be doing open houses in various communities outside of the district to just educate folks on what a port is, what the measure is, and you know what they're going to be acting on. Any questions on Port District enlargement?
Yes, I'm going to share my, no, you know what, I don't have that word. Does this have to do with the boundaries that were being discussed for, like, the, recently in the neighborhood? Your neighborhood? Is
no.
this, like, anything to do with that? It's
No.
like, well, if you don't want it right here in this little teeny part of Everett, we're just going to have all of Snohomish County.
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with the overlay.
That's
Yes.
the word.
No,
overlay.
no, this is completely separate.
Just checking.
Yes. Good
Thank you.
question. Yeah. Anything else?
Thanks. I think I get a lot of questions from neighborhoods and when I go to my neighborhood meetings about what it's going to mean for their property taxes and what the financial impact would be if it were to go countywide. So if you could touch on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, current Port District residents' taxes would go down. The larger the assessed value.
You say that again, please.
The current Port District tax would go down. Because what happens is the larger the assessed value, it drives the millage rate down. So if you look at, Seattle, Tacoma, or some of the other countywide ports, they have a larger millage, or a smaller millage rate because they have a larger assessed value. Interestingly, the way the RCW is set up for port enlargement, it is set up almost like a true annexation, as though the people in the district and outside the district are on level footing, whereas interestingly, the people in the current port district would benefit by an enlargement, but the way the RCW is set up, they don't get a vote. It's only the people outside of the current boundaries that get a vote. So,
The quick question of how is that millage rate set then?
well, so the ports are authorized to 45 cents a thousand, but we have really never been there. Our current millage rate, when I started, I think was at 30 cents. Does that sound right? Yeah, and it just keeps going down. We're at 18 cents right now.
So the rate for people inside the current port district would be something lower than 18 cents, but but you would, I assume, then collect more overall because you'd be collecting it from a lower millage rate, but a much larger population.
Correct, a lower millage rate, but a larger population. But those resources go straight back into community investment. So they don't go into salaries or operations or anything. They go straight back into priorities for the district as a whole, right? So one of the first things that we would have to do is update our strategic plan to account for the larger area and the investment in the larger area.
Because that 15% you were talking about earlier, that's a kind of by population, because I guess you'd go from serving about 100,000 to about 800,000
Yeah.
or 700, okay.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we do that you guys probably are aware of, we do tourism grants, we do environmental programs, we do small business grants.
Jetty Island Days.
Jetty Island Days. We do, we do transportation grants. So for example, we'll, with one of our freight corridors, we provide matching grant funds for leveraging better chances of federal dollars. And we do, like down in Mukilteo, we do funding for Japanese gulch or matching dollars for Japanese gulch. So those types of programs would just get expanded on a larger scale, or could get expanded on a larger scale, among other things that may come down the line.
So the millage rate, is that MILLAGE?
MILEAGE,
Mileage, millage?
Millage.
Okay, can you,
right? Is that right?
It's 2 L's.
2 L's?
I think so.
can you briefly?
Not a Jeopardy question, no.
It starts with a PH, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
What is that, like the tax rate, only
It's
with a
tax-
different
it's-
word?
It's a tax rate.
Dollars per thousand.
It's dollars per
Oh,
thousand.
mill,
Mill,
okay,
yeah,
okay, thank you.
so.
I could look it up and tell everybody the answer.
Or Councilmember Vogel, you had the spelling right. The a mill is a tenth of a penny or something, and so a millage, M-I-L-L.
MILLAGE.
AGE.
Here we go.
Spelling bee.
Well, I was thinking MILEDGE, what are we doing here? So, but it's the general tax.
It's the general tax, yeah. So right now, the port has a capital investment program. I'll just use this year as an example. So we just passed a budget, over, with a $38 million capital investment program. Our taxes that we collect were a little bit less than 5 million for our current district. So we invest 7 times over what we collect, and a lot of that is subsidized through our operations. So the idea being that the more infrastructure investment funds we have for public investment, we'll continue to do that and leverage those funds. And then just quickly, I'll be respectful of time here, but these are just some, I mentioned today, we were fortunate enough to have the governor come visit to talk about port electrification and greening the supply chain. So we've been making a significant amount of investment in green technology, capabilities for shore power, future harbor craft, we've cleaned up 250 acres of the waterfront. We're preparing to move into the in-water, which is a extremely large task, and it's gonna be a big project, very, very large project with a lot of coordination. We've also just got awarded a $5 million grant from the state to be able to electrify Pier 3, which is for our shipyard. Right now, our shipyard runs almost solely on diesel, and that's electrification project is going to save about 620 tons of CO2 a year, so it's huge. Our shipyard also just got certified for a master ship repair agreement that allows them to do work on Navy vessels, which is huge, so that our sailors can stay here. So that's been something that we've been goaling for quite some time. We also just signed a lease, and they're going to be opening soon with the Maritime Training Institute. And they're the first one in the Puget Sound and the Pacific Northwest. They have locations in Virginia, San Diego, and Hawaii. And they are going to be training captains for ferry boats, Navy, and Coast Guard. There's a huge demand in that area. And if you think about it, the reason it's so challenging is that it's a pretty lengthy multi-week program to earn that certification. So if people in this area have to fly to San Diego or Virginia or Hawaii, put up hotel rooms for all of that time, and then pay for the course and be away from their families and so forth, or any jobs that they may have today, it's really a challenge to get that workforce trained. So having a location here is going to be a game changer. I think particularly having the largest ferry system in the nation, combined with all of our maritime assets and training. So that's a really exciting project that's coming down the pike.
One more, there was a proposal a while back for a fire training facility that was, if you're going to talk about that, go ahead. If that was part of this or.
That's a city proposal, and so we just met with some folks about it today. So working on a federal grant through the Defense Communities Infrastructure, other acronyms related to that, but that's the goal. And then there's a state kind of corollary to that too, the same modeled after the federal one. So hoping to kind of match those two, that would provide a training facility for firefighters, both for our firefighters, the Navy folks who have to go, like theoretically even as far as like San Diego to get the appropriate training. So yeah.
And for industrial, like Boeing, I think was one of the.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I guess that, I had the impression it was going to happen in that area.
Yeah.
I had the impression it was going to happen in that area. The area, is it part of would it happen at the port, or it happen city property there?
It's city property, but it's in the port. It's right
That's why I was
between the New Norton Terminal, which you can see in this picture, and the base.
Okay.
And that facility, the port is supporting, that is going to be critical. When the military really likes to have firefighter training capabilities next to ship repair facilities, by the nature of the work and the welding. So there's an important nexus between the two of those.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick follow-up about the electrifications. I know that there had been some barriers because international maritime standards hadn't set a plug.
Exactly.
Lack of better term
Yep.
there. So has there been movement on that, or is there anything we can do to help hurry it along?
So that is actually right. Good memory. The International Maritime Organization has not standardized plugs. So I always equate it to, we could go put in an iPhone charger and the ship could show up with the Samsung adapter. So you kind of putting it in cell phone terms, right? And so it's all ready for it. We just need to know what type of plug to install. It sounds simple, but they're millions of dollars for these plugs, so we don't want to go buy the wrong plug. In the cruise industry and large container ships, 18,000 TEU container ships, it's more easy to make that investment because there's only a few of them, right? And the cruise has pretty much been standard. The types of cargo ships that come into ports like ours are more smaller scale. They're not in port as long. And there's a lot of variety. They're not standard carriers. And so smaller ports really need that standardization to be able to make that investment. I currently serve on the American Association of Port Authorities Board, and I've been talking with them quite a bit about pushing, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act and having all of this money coming out of the federal government. It'd be really nice to have IMO standardize that so that we could take advantage of this funding and make these investments in our facilities, not only our facilities, but port facilities throughout the nation. And then last but not least, so we've got the waterfront place. So we've talked through this project. So this is mostly just photos, updates. So we opened Fisherman Jack's and South Fork Bakery. We did the Jetty Land restroom, the playground set, Woods Coffee, Sound to Summit, the Weyerhaeuser Muse, and it doubles as a museum. We actually just got done deconstructing the historic Equator boat, and if you haven't been in Waterfront Place lately, come by Scuttlebutt. We've got a whole exhibit of the Equator right next to Scuttlebutt. It is very cool. Our team did a really nice job on it. These are just some photos. If you haven't been to Fisherman Jack's, you should. It's really good. They probably have to roll you out of there, but it's really good. Same with South Fork. Port Gardner Landing, Sound to Summit. They're working on putting in some outdoor covered area just so that people can use it year-round, especially with the dogs and stuff. A lot of dogs on the waterfront. And then the Muse that this project won several awards for its adaptive reuse. So we were really proud of that. And then the boat club and waterline. This is the play set, the Equator with a cute little kid here. And then we just got done with our seasonal ice rink. We did our first Holiday on the Bay 5K and all of our lighting, so we'll continue to add to our lighting as we go. We are in the process of building the Millwright Loop Road, which is why if you try to go to the waterfront right now, it's a little bit of a maze to try to get there. It's a lot of infrastructure work going in there. That is part of our apprentice program because it is over $1 million. I think it's about a $12 million infrastructure project. So that will be under construction all this year. LPC West is preparing to submit permits for 313 housing units along with ground floor retail in this area right here. And then we are preparing to submit permits to break ground on these two new buildings along with the parking lot. Menchie's, Rustic Cork Wine Bar, Tapped Public House, and a few others. And the Everett Yacht Club is going to be opening soon, and this is some future projects as well as the restaurant.
This has nothing to do with anything except the PSU, which is the Coast Guard at the port, is PSU 313, and you just said that they're building 313 permitted. So 313, there you go.
It's a lucky number. Yeah. And this is just some artist renderings of the 313 housing units and the preload and the fill. It's very, very expensive to build on waterfront. In this area, just it's hard to know how deep pilings have to be, but it's 150 feet to load bearing. So I mean, if you think about the tallest building in the city of Everett, that's how big pretty much the pilings have to be just to get the foundation for these buildings. So it's a very expensive proposition to build on the waterfront, and that's why a lot of this work that the port's been doing has been able to facilitate that because it doesn't always pencil for the private sector. We have very patient capital. These are just some other photos of the housing and Fisherman Jack's. This is an artist rendering, which is old, of the building. We're actually at 100% design now, so we'll need to update this, but it'll be really cool, have a big outdoor deck on the second floor and public restrooms, and it'll be a neat place.
I was just to add that Tapped Public House is in Mukilteo, and they've been a really vibrant community partner. So they host a lot of events for the community. The Chamber of Commerce meets at their building. They contribute to lots of things. So it's cool to get a branch of theirs in Everett.
No, I appreciate that. They're great community partners. They're very much team players. It's a local brand, and it's very family friendly. And that's what we were trying to go for is, more casual dining to go with the ice cream and to bring the families in and things like that. As we go into our next phase of retail, we're really looking at some type of destination retail type establishment where kids and families can go and enjoy. And what that looks like, we're not quite sure, but definitely want to have that kind of activity on the waterfront. And then this is Lazy Boy Brewing, and we did, Tapped also agreed to open up the fresh fish market and do a fish and chip bar here. So we will have a fresh fish market on the waterfront for the first time. I have every confidence it's going to be extremely successful. There's the closest one, I think, is down in Edmonds. And we have the largest marina on the West Coast. It's the epicenter of fishing, and we've got a lot of folks that catch fish and want to sell them. So I'm excited about this opportunity. And historically, historically, this is where the old net sheds used to be, because Everett commercial fishing, there was net sheds down there, and as part of the environmental cleanup, they had to be removed. And so the operators have also agreed to call it the Net Sheds Fish Market in honor of the history of the site. These are just some public access enhancements that we've done over the years and continue to add on and build onto. Baywood, shoreline restoration cleanup, which I'll just leave it at that. And this is the Blue Heron Slough Restoration Bank. You can see this. This project is amazing for salmon, shorebirds, different wildlife. Also really helps, we're looking at different options of potentially breaching the dike on the other side of the slough to help with Snohomish River surge capacity. So there's a lot of opportunities that come with these estuaries. And I don't know if you guys have seen them lately, but there's a lot more orcas out in the bay. I've seen probably 7 orcas in the last 12 months. And before that, I hadn't seen much. So I think that all the work of the Tulalip tribes, the county, the city, and the port, it's all really working together to help, restore some of our harbor. And we've won some international awards for this project. And then these are just the cleanups. Our next big cleanup is Mill A. It's a historic Weyerhaeuser site. That's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a $200 million cleanup. It's not insignificant. It's right here.
Oh, I see it.
See it?
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
So it's a highly contaminated site that is top priority. So we are the first first entity in the state that's got an extended grant agreement with Ecology to essentially secure MODCA funding because it's such a large project. And then, hopefully cooperatively work with the former private landowner to contribute to their contamination. And that is a quick update on everything and the boundaries and so forth. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilor Vogel, do you have any questions? Sure. Great.
I asked all the women.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. I'm always impressed with the great work you guys are doing, and it just feels like this really great horizon, of what's coming down the pike, down at the waterfront, and hopefully possibly across the whole county.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate all the city's support. I should have said it, but with the permitting and so forth, the city's been great. If we didn't have, given our seasonality of our businesses and our operations, if we didn't have the city's support on our permitting, our businesses would have a hard time. It's really hard to open up a restaurant in January,
I just have one more question. You mentioned public access there, and I know, for a lot of our community members who don't frequent the waterfront, they think of this as big industrial port, what it was 20, 30 years, 40 years ago.
Yep.
Is there a site on the port's website, for example, that shows public access?
Yes, we have a whole section on public access,
Okay,
and
great.
we have a whole public access map.
Oh, good.
And
good.
so, and I should say, we are looking at, we just acquired all of the tide flats between the boat launch and Geldwin. They were formerly owned by Foss. And so we've acquired those for the purpose of river management. Right now, all the dredge material for the lower settling basin goes on Jetty Island. I think there's a strong potential to do a shoreline habitat restoration and public access element with the dredge disposals on this side of the harbor, so that you can have potential beach access not only accessible by boat, and it provide more appropriate access to kind of a beach element. So that's something that I've asked our team to really focus on. The permitting is going to be a huge hurdle, but because of the beneficial reuse of the dredge sands, I think that it's going to be a really great project for the environment and a public access amenity for the community when it gets done one of these years. So,
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great. Any last thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
do you guys want any hard copies of
I would like a
anything?
hard copy, yes.
Okay,
thank you.
Great. Great. Well, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
just leave
And,
some of these
I
for
think,
you.
would it be okay if we save the 2023 updates or year in review till next month? 'Cause I don't think 2023 is going to go anywhere. All right, fantastic, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. It is 6:01 and we are adjourned.
Lisa, I'll take a couple of these back